Hello and welcome to another video from Never a Truer Word. This is where we look at the words that people choose to use and find out if they're being truthful or is there a little deception going on there. And we're going to look at some stats around Bryan Kohberger, the guy accused of killing the Idaho 4 college students today. On this channel, I don't just like to sit here and say, look how smart I am at what I notice in people's words. What I want to do is give you skills that you can take away and use with words that you see yourself in your life. And this, I think, is the perfect one for that. It's some stats that were posted around Bryan Kohberger today. I think this originally comes from a YouTube comment, but someone who used to be in the FBI has amplified that today. And they've come in for some criticism for doing that. Now, I would hope someone who used to work for the FBI has some deception detection skills. And to be fair, they've said they don't know if these are true or not, but still thought them worthy of sharing. At the time of screenshotting, nearly 38,000 people had seen these stats. Now, some people went to logic and said things like, look, he says his sister is a Brown law grad, but Brown does not have a law school. So they've gone to logic to kind of say, these may be garbage stats. But if we look at the words that are used in this YouTube comment, could we have said that these are not true, that this is not a believable post? Let's have a look and see. Here's the comment. My sister, who is a Brown Law Ivy League grad and current attorney by profession, was a little intrigued by this case and did some research. And in no time in historical American law history did a defendant ever stand silent with no alibi after 7 months. His only remaining option is to avoid the death penalty. He's guilty as guilty gets. In American homicide cases in the past 20 years, 1,031 defendants at arraignment stood silent and all 1,031 were later found guilty with even less evidence. So let's break it down. How many deceptive markers can I find in this 88-word statement? I've always said that just spotting one deceptive marker is not an outright indication that a lie is being told here. People misspeak or use phrases that they use all the time. We're looking for a few deceptive markers. We're looking for a cluster of them as well. So let's see what we can see in this 88-word statement. First thing I notice is the involvement of a third party. People hate lying. They really don't like lying. They don't like being caught out in a lie. It's psychologically unsafe to lie. If you get caught out, your ego takes a bashing if someone says you're not being honest. So here, all the facts, everything here the ownership isn't taken by the person making the post. They've put it all on my sister. So if this is found to be a whole load of rubbish, psychologically, this person has the safety of saying, oh, it wasn't me that said this, it was my sister. So that's marker number one, the involvement of a third party. In fact, everything here can be blamed on that third party. Hey, I was only passing on what I've been told. It wasn't me that was lying. I thought this was the truth. It came from my sister. So marker number one, the invocation of a third party, in this case, my sister. Next, I'm going to look at priorities. So the first things we mention are the most important things to us in our heads. And the second thing that we mention is the second most important thing, and so on and so on. So what are the priorities in this statement? Well, first of all, it's my sister, which we've already spoken about. And then it's building the credibility of the sister, who is a Brown Law Ivy League grad and current attorney by profession. Why is that a priority? There's some really, if true, interesting, outstanding information in this comment. So why not get to that? And then why not say why you know it? Why is it important to, first of all, get across why this is credible information? Well, one of the reasons for that could be that it's not true. Truthful people don't feel the need to build credibility before they tell you the truth. They just say the truth. If questioned later, then they may say some things that give it credibility, but truthful people don't feel the need to come out there and build the credibility of what it is they're going to say. They're just telling the truth. They just come out and say it. But here, we're being given the credibility of the information that is about to come before the information. The stats in here should be the top priority of what is being said, but no, it's invoking my sister, which we've spoken about. That was marker number one. And then it is building the credibility of my sister as number two. So there you go. Marker number two is the priorities don't feel quite right for me. Now, when the logic feels off, look into it and see if there's anything that in the words that you can pick out as to why that logic is off. Now, I've got some logic that's off here. Because one of the stats is, in no time in historical American law history did a defendant ever stand silent with no alibi after 7 months. How old is American law history? 200 years plus, and this person has gone and checked every single case there? That doesn't seem feasible to me whatsoever. And especially when it goes with the words, because the sister was only a little intrigued, just a little intrigued, but managed to find this huge stat after doing all this research. And notice it's not a lot of research or a deep dive, it's just did some research, quite trivial, did some research, but came out with this huge stat, which infers that they looked at, I don't know, thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of cases to come up with this fact. So actually, I'll change number 3 from the logic being off to actually it's conflicting words. The sister was only a little intrigued and they only did some research, but they've come up with these 2 huge facts where they have looked at all American law history ever, according to this, and also every homicide case in the past 20 years where the defendants have stood silent. That's 1,031. And notice there they were found guilty with even less evidence. That means that just being a little intrigued and doing some research, they looked at the transcripts, the evidence in 1,031 cases and weighed that evidence and then said, right, there's less evidence there than there is against Bryan Kohberger. Conflicting words there. I don't buy that for a second, especially as in the current case for this guy, not all the evidence is out there anyway. So yeah, conflicting words there. So that's marker number 3. Marker number 4 is this person goes to absolutes a lot. Just look at the absolutes here. In no time did a defendant ever. Only remaining option. He's as guilty gets. All 1,031. So really big words, big concepts, solid. Life isn't like that. Life is shades of grey. It's not black and white. So why have they gone to these real absolutes here? In no time did a defendant ever. His only remaining option. And the reason for that, again, they just want to build the credibility of what it is that they have to say, potentially because it is deception going on here. So by going to absolutes, they don't leave any of that room for doubt. They go absolutely to these absolutes. Marker number 5 is disappearing friends. Now, lying is hard. Lying is really, really hard work to do because you've got to make up a story and you've got to keep track of the entire story. Look at where the sister goes in this statement. The sister is the first thing mentioned, and then the sister's credentials, the second thing mentioned. And then the sister kind of disappears and doesn't get mentioned again. It moves from being this about the sister to the person, the guy, I presume it is, making this post, because it's definitely coming from him. It's not my sister thinks he's as guilty gets. It's he's as guilty gets. In fact, if you look at, it doesn't even say my sister was a little intrigued by the case and she did some research. The sister's disappeared entirely there, just was a little intrigued by this case and did some research. But the sister, who is the most important thing, the first thing mentioned in this story, disappears. Nothing comes from the sister at all in this story. Everything comes from the person making the post as well. So marker 5, disappearing friends. And then marker number 6 is credibility. There's some really interesting parts here that just have no credibility. I mentioned it before. I mean, not only does it not make sense in no time in historical American law history, but also, obviously, this is historical. You can't tell what's going to happen in trials in the future. So why use all these words about American law history or historical American law history? This doesn't have any credibility, as does saying he's guilty as guilty gets. I don't think anyone who's an Ivy League grad or a current attorney by profession, and why say current attorney by profession? That's really interesting as well, by the way, but what would say he's as guilty gets. There's no nuance in there. There's nothing that we would expect about having an open mind or seeing how it goes. So the credibility of this is not so good. So in conclusion, 88 words in the statement, 6 deceptive markers. That means there's 1 deceptive marker for every 14 words in that statement. For me, that means a high probability that that is an absolutely rubbish stat. If you enjoyed that, if you want to learn more, connect.neveratruerword.com will be where you can find all the social media stuff that goes along with content like this. Posts.neveratruerword.com, some more in-depth looks at statements and words that people have used there. That's posts.neveratruerword.com. And you'll also find more videos like this on this YouTube channel.